first of all, therapy is not advice. Now, some of you may have done therapy and received advice, or interpreted what a therapist has told you as advice. For the therapists that actually did intend to give you advice, well, they're not doing therapy. And that's a potential red flag, that if you are looking for therapy and a therapist is giving you advice, well, you might not be getting what you paid for. Now, there are also people that they go to therapy and they misinterpret things that therapists say as advice. That's a bit different. And maybe the therapist can be more forgiven for that. And they can perhaps, or you can perhaps clarify together if there's confusion about that. But the reason therapy isn't advice is because there's no reason for therapy to exist if advice was sufficient to solve problems. The reason therapy is a thing is because for many people, advice doesn't work. If it did, the therapy would be obsolete. But it doesn't. You know, there are some people, you tell them, get regular sleep, go to the gym, find a purpose, and filter out dishonest people that are unable to reciprocate. If you apply those things, you're probably not going to be doing too bad. But a lot of people don't do that, even if they know intellectually that it will work. So that's why therapy is a thing. It's for the class of people that don't understand their own intentions and motivations and emotions and thoughts, and wish to have someone help them navigate their mind. And by doing so, they can gain a greater awareness of themselves, which translates into a greater range of choices that allow the person or afford the person a greater degree of freedom. Now, what they do with that larger range of choices is up to them. Another thing therapy isn't is an ethical framework. Now, this one's tricky because I think it would be naive to assume that there are no ethical presuppositions in therapy and that therapists are not neutral. No one is neutral. We attempt to be neutral, but it can never be done perfectly. And it's a therapist that thinks it can be is naive and doesn't understand themselves or human beings. So just to connect this back to the notion of choices, so which choice to make once you've identified all the choices you could potentially make. In the therapy, you can talk about trade-offs, but determining what constitutes a cost versus a benefit is going to come down in large part to your values, which the therapist can't give you. Can't tell you necessarily what ethical code to subscribe to. That's kind of up to you to figure out. Now, obviously, when we get to the extremes, you know, if you tell your therapist, you know, my neighbor is bothering me, I think I might just kill him, throw him in the sea. Well, again, there are limits here, and we're bound by some ethical constraints, but those are on the extreme ends, they're on the fringes. But when it comes to You know, should I marry this woman or sail around the earth? We can talk about the trade-offs of each one of those decisions, but claiming that there's an objective answer to that question without reference to your own individual values is not really possible. So another thing therapy is not it's not advice, and it's not telling you what's right and wrong. And this is a tricky one, for myself included, because certain topics that come up in therapy, to me, and my ethical code, seem completely black and white. And that the idea that one would even have any lack of clarity here on what's the right decision is difficult to comprehend. But although psychology, the beauty of psychology is that it overlaps with so many other fields, including philosophy and ethics, they're not exactly the same, and you're not meeting to have an ethical debate or to be lectured ethically. Again, there may be some occasions when it is appropriate to talk about this stuff, but it's always directed toward how you think about it and you better understanding your beliefs about what's right and wrong, what's ethical, and what's beneficial to you versus harmful, which may differ largely from the therapist. Okay. So I hope that has given you some clarity. Maybe I can say one or two other things about therapy and what makes it unique. So a therapist is not your friend. We're not here for an informal chat. If you go to therapy and all you do is update your therapist on what happened that week, you're not doing therapy. Issue of the week therapy is not therapy. And that the reason that people can get into that cycle of just updating their therapist on what happened in the week is because they did not identify and outline the purpose of the therapy originally. If you fail to do that, you're going to be just wandering around without any direction. And when people do that, they just defer to telling the therapist what happened to them recently. What's just giving them a news update, basically. And the therapist is to blame for that. By, again, not clarifying expectations and intentions early on. And again, obviously not every person has a very clear vision of what they want to achieve up front. And that's okay. You don't have to have everything. And even if you think you do have a clear intention, that can change through the exploration. But there has to be some intention to clarify that eventually. Because if you can't, then we're just kind of wandering around blind. Okay, one other thing. So a therapist is not your friend, but what makes therapy so unique and powerful when done right is, firstly, in regular relationships, we naturally have a sense of reciprocity. Someone shares some information about them, and we share something about ourselves, or they ask us in return about our own life. And so there's a back and forth. And reciprocity is a very foundational habit and tendency that enables human beings to cooperate and get things done and build relationships. Now, in therapy, what makes it so unique is that this expectation is taken away. And you as the client can be completely selfishly focused on your own needs and not have to worry about how the therapist is feeling, because they're outside of your network. They're this strange foreigner, visitor, that's just dropping in, looking in from the outside, but is not embedded in your life and in your larger system. And that's by design. It's intended to be that way on purpose, so that we get the maximum amount of time to focus on you and understand you and explore your mind. And when some people that begin therapy, this is a very unnatural relationship to be in, which makes sense because, again, it's so anomalous, so out of the ordinary. And some clients, they feel an urge to sort of check in or ask about the therapist because it's so weird to have this very one-sided dynamic. And again, that makes sense because it is unnatural. But it's designed that way so that we can be completely focused on you. All right, I think that's enough for now. And hopefully that has clarified for you what therapy is.